Hey guys, welcome back to another Vanguard video. Today we're talking about Fated One of Sacred Time, Liael Draconis. So we only have actually 6 cards to talk about. 4 of them are Liaels, including the brand new one, and then 2 Blang. And then I'm going to do like an end of the video where I talk about the community post and some ideas that people brought up, as well as a few sample deck lists from my friend, and kind of how you can change up the builds of the deck, and kind of give you some more inspiration in terms of deck building. So first off, we have the Fated One of Sacred Time, Liael Draconis herself. So act on Vanguard Circle once per turn. You cost Energy Blast 4 and bind a normal unit from Rearguard Circle or from drop. So 90% of the time it will be from drop, obviously, so you can keep it rear. And then you choose a card from your hand, discard it, and this unit gets drive +1 until end of turn. So technically not triple drive, but 3 drives just like we saw in the anime. And of course this has a lot of really good synergy with any kind of discard effects. But because it's Energy Blast 4, going first with 6 energy, you only have 2. We did get a card that energy charges 1, so you could try Bloody Arc or something, but I think the easier options will definitely be like Exalted Dragon and Wayward Angel, which we'll talk about more once we get to deck lists. Then you have the second skill, which is the Auto and Vanguard Circle. When it attacks, you cost counterblast 1, choosing your rearguards, bind it, search your deck for up to 1 card with the same card name as any card in your bind zone, call to rearguard circle and shuffle the deck. So thankfully now you don't have to rotate through 2 copies. A lot of people were saying this in the post, and of course we saw this in the anime. So thankfully it's a little less awkward. You don't have to worry too much about emptying your bind and bot deck, but of course emptying your bind will be very easy when you use the OG Amorta 2 PG and shuffle those cards back into deck. Then you have the Divine skill, Auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle, this unit attacked. If your opponent's Vanguard's Great Through Greater, you choose a Great Through Greater card with Liael's card name from your soul or drop. Before, I believe it was only drop, so big upgrade there. So when you Persona Ride, you'll basically just have that set up immediately. Ride it as stand. If you roll that you just drive, becomes drive +1 until end of turn. And then of course the Vanguard skill for the on attack is not once per turn. So just like the original Liael Amorta, you get the extra attack swing on the Divine skill turn. So honestly, a big upgrade for many reasons. Of course, the drive +1 is really big, and you can set up your bind before you go for the on attacks. You don't necessarily have to rotate, 2 copies of a unit, because for OG Liael, you had to call from deck whatever you binded for the same copy, which is really, really awkward. I did also see people echoing in the community post that like CB might be a little bit awkward. I don't think it's the biggest issue in the world, and I think the deck is still very strong regardless. They also got the new grade 1 that gives +5 to front row that we're basically guessing that we got from the anime, so pretty obvious that we did get it, and it is honestly a pretty decent card. I think you want to play it really just for the soul, but I think Draconis on its own is just a really big upgrade. And then of course the thing that a lot of other people were seeing in the community posts as well, so shout out to you guys, was that you get a free PG essentially, because now you can play extra copies of Amorta and not have to worry about having those for Persona Ride. And of course you have it through, I believe it's Regalis, I'm probably saying the name wrong, to check top 7 and find either any Amorta or Gab and add it to hand. So I think amazing. Of course you can find your Persona Rides off that. You can find OG Amorta in order to just have a PG. Again, the first skill is balanced because, you can't bind a trigger unit. You could technically still play Hostage and, Hostage your OT and shuffle that back to deck like Amorta was doing before. But I think a lot of people will kind of focus more on the hyper offensive, skills of this deck, because the ceiling of the deck is a lot higher. With those 3 drives, you technically get 5 drives technically, because you have the 3 drives from here on your Divine skill turn is what we're counting. So the 4th drive, and then of course if you have 4 more damage, Gab will be that 5th check. So 5 drives is pretty scary if you have everything set up, which is quite scary in terms of just building a hand and trying to end the game. And there's a lot of good front row power as well. So just looking on Draconis on its own without even getting to deck list, I think it's a very strong Vanguard, and I think a lot of people are really excited for how much the deck will change. And of course having more than 4 PGs, because you can play the OG Amorta and you still have the Fated One name, so of course it still works, is really nice. Alright, so now for the triple rare, we have Knight of Distant Bow Almov. So this card is an elf, and it has the on place that you choose a grade 3 card with Liael's card name from your rod deck, and you may reveal it. If you reveal the card, or you have a grade 3 greater Vanguard with Liael's card name, energy charge 1. So interesting that they're wording it this way, because technically any deck could play this, have Liael in the ride deck, reveal and get the energy charge 1 technically, because the only other deck apparently that has energy charge is Hound Risers, and Hound Risers is locked to the Vanguard, so kind of interesting point there. And then Auto Rearguard Circle, at the end of the battle, this unit boosted. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Liael's card name, and your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you put this unit to the soul, and you get all your front row units get power +5k until end of turn, and of course this will stack. So just a very strong card, getting you soul, getting you power. The second skill is restricted by your opponent's Vanguard being grade 3 or greater, so you can't use this going first, but you already have cards such as the check top 7 searcher, you could throw in Gab or whatever else. You really have easy ways to scale over defensives, and you also of course have Surgeon and other easy boosters that you can put out like Exalted Dragon, Wayward, whatever, the Keter pile to just easily make a board. So I don't think there's really too much to say about this. The energy charge one is basically just to supplement your energy if you went first, so then you have, you know, like 7 energy that turn, and then of course on subsequent turns when you find more of this, you know, you always get that energy on place. But yeah, in terms of just the skill on its own, it's just very good. Like, this card is just getting you a lot of resource, and you do really want the extra soul for other costs as the game progresses. So amazing card. You're definitely going to be playing this maybe at 4, maybe a little bit less, but like, this card is just insane. And the fact that that +5 stacks for the entire turn is really strong, because you can of course swing those side columns, or, you know, do it when it boosts Van. You just, you know, get that easy +5. You have 3 of them. That's +15 on top of your Persona Ride, which is, you know, +25 for the turn on top of your Divine Skill turn, and all those drop checks. It is quite the number indeed. So next up, we have Knight of Magnificent Beauty, Amite. So this card has auto rearguard circle when your unit is placed on another rearguard circle in the same column as this unit by the ability of your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Liael on its card name. You cost put this unit's soul, and the place unit gets +5 until end of turn. So kind of another way to kind of pump up your rears and get more soul, but of course the triple rare kind of just does this better. Even though it does have to boost first, it just kind of gets you way more utility in terms of energy and of course more soul. Alright, so next up we have Descending Eagle. So his auto is when he's bound during your turn. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Liael on its card name, you choose a grade 1 or greater normal unit without Sentinel from your drop and put it on the bottom deck. So kind of reusing your units. Kind of wish he didn't have to get bound and something else in the same column did, and he would probably be honestly a really good card, but unfortunately it's a little bit awkward that way. And of course you do want to be playing the new triple rare, or instead maybe the back row restander or 10k boosters instead over this card. So kind of unfortunate. He's kind of like a botched like common, but you know, still honestly an okay card that could maybe come up in some future builds. It's just right now you do have better cards you could be running. So next up are the blank cards, and I'm not really sure what these were for. It funnily does actually enable your blank skill turn 4 if you do get the 2 bind for the on attack and you have 2 of him, but really that's not happening. But anyways, auto rearguard circle, if your bind zone is 4 more cards, this cost is reduced by energy blast 2 on attack. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blind Mire, you cost energy blast 2, and this unit gets +10k until end of battle. Then at the end of that battle, you can put this unit into soul. So really this helps for Artist Area matchup on top of Colossus, but realistically I don't think Artist Area is that common right now unless it's a good anti-meta pick for JP. So a little bit strange that they're getting like a second Colossus. And also the second auto doesn't even draw you a card, it just gives you more power. So auto, when this card is put into soul by your card's ability, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Blind minus card name, you cost to bind this card face down. Choose when you rearguards and it gets +5 until end of turn. If your bind zone is 8 or more cards, it gets +10 instead of +5. So it does help your numbers, but you know, on your kill turn, you basically just want to, you know, have Zamug, have Vadrock columns set up with the festival package order, and just overwhelm your opponent with giant numbers. This isn't really doing that, and it is also going away, but of course you can, you know, not pay the cost to, you know, shove it into soul. But you know, it's still really awkward because this isn't really helping you farm turn 3 like Colossus. You know, Colossus is letting you draw 1, and if you combo that with the Ace unit or other effects such as like, you know, Butcher putting it to soul, you are still getting extra utility out of your, you know, building soul and getting hand. But this card isn't really doing that, so kind of a really weird support for Blang. Maybe you'll play it at 2 again for Artisaria, but you know, I don't think you'll really be playing too much of this card. Alright, so the next one is a random rare we got. So we have Noxious Hurler. So auto, when this card is put into soul from deck during your turn, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Black minus card name, cost energy +3, call this card to an open back or rearguard circle and soul charge 1. So this is a little bit more interesting because you do want to spend your energy actually more on Zamug and like maybe Tiskar. A lot of lists started cutting Tiskar, especially for the Ace unit, because that is energy blast 3. But, you know, if those cards kind of got cycled out, this is honestly a decent option for the deck because, you know, it's just a free booster and extra soul is always nice and blank. The thing is, you just had other cards before that weren't using soul, such as, I forgot his name, the guy that stops striding essentially, or makes your opponent ditch before they Persona Ride. So, you know, you had better boosters that were getting you soul for free that weren't using energy. It's just that this is kind of like utility in the deck instead of having to play Pony or like the set 9 generic that is Pony plus Gungaram combined. So yeah, you're probably not playing this just because you have way better cards and your deck space is already really tight. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the brand new 6 cards that we got. So here's some Liael deck lists. This first one is just to kind of give you an idea of what you can play. I know there's no Rigless piece in this one. I'll talk about Rigless pieces in the other 2 lists in a second. But kind of just to tell you what the proxies are. You have King, which is of course the new Liael Draconis. You have the Ordeal Dragon here, which is the MLB promo. That's supposed to be the new triple rare for energy charging and +5 to front row. And then Painkiller Angel here is Dissection Angel from set 9, because of course we don't have that in the English deck log, which is, you know, Soul Blast 1 to kill itself, draw 1. or, you know, when you draw check a trigger to Soul Blast 2 and countercharge. So kind of an extra option of countercharge instead of having to play Caliburn, because this list is trying to fit more units in. So Valtrosa's here just because it's easy check top 5. Of course, you can play Caterpile with Teeth Vault and Wisdom, but the problem, of course, is that a lot of people hate the consistency where you just have to see both of them, and it feels really bad when you only see one of them. Sequence Wizard is okay for early game. He's probably just better late game, and of course, you know, extra soul if you need it. And of course, you know, you have 4 of the check top 7 searcher for Regalias. I probably got the name wrong, but you know, just to find your Personarize, to find your Amortas for extra PGs, and of course Gabwelius as well, because you're very likely to pitch Gab early and get him binded. But you know, in case you don't, it is another check top. Unfortunately, you don't really have room for Spiral Cutie or Biscotti. I think there will be some people who try it out in some lists just because it's a lot of gas. As soon as you ride up to grade 3, you're drawing a lot of cards. But I think you do want to stabilize a little bit more in terms of like late game and kind of building more tempo instead of drawing like 4 cards when you ride up to grade 3, because you ditch for ride deck and then you're also dishing during ride phase for the grade 2 skill, so that's how you would draw 4. But you know, of course, your energy is also very tight, and you, I think, do want to of course save soul for a lot of your other costs. And the problem is that, you know, you won't really have that extra energy to work with because Draconis' skill is E4 unless you find the new triple rare generic. But of course, that will also supplement your soul as well. So kind of a little bit awkward, but those are the pieces you can run there. And I'll talk more about the Regulus pieces in the next list. The next list is a little bit more stock standard, I think, to what you'll actually see. So of course we have the Ace unit. The Ace unit, of course, is E3. You're only going to ever use it once per game, so it's not too difficult to really fit into the deck because, of course, there's no Biscotti here. Because again, Biscotti will make your energy very, very awkward. But of course, check top 7, giving something resist is very nice. You can give your boosters resist or whatever in order to keep them on the board for next turn, though most of your boosters are just going poof. Is kind of a little bit of the problem with this deck. I think Shroud and Shadow could also be really good, but you know, that is a CB if you know, did ride that turn. So it's a little bit awkward, but I think it could be really good. I think some people will definitely try Shroud and Shadow with Wisdom. Shroud and Shadow with Teeth Vault Wisdom that we did see a lot of in, let's say, like Youthberg. You know, Exalted Dragon, Sequence Wizard is still here. Like those 3 core with a Regalis is like really good. Or not Regalis, you know, Religila, I believe is what her name is. But it's covered up by the text right now that the deck list I'm looking at, so it's a little bit awkward. Of course, I think Sergon is still really good. You know, not having an order like Wisdom to supplement the condition kind of sucks, but you know, it's still a great early game card nonetheless. I think Dissection Angel will probably still be a one-off. Maybe you could try more of it. I do think it is really nice for early game, but of course it doesn't make numbers like Dog. But of course, you know, that 1cc could come up. It's just Soul Blast 2, I think, is a little bit costly, even though you do have a lot of cards that are supplementing your soul. I do think you could also play more Morta. Most of these lists, I believe, do have 2 or all of them, but you could play 3, maybe a 4. I think 4 is a little bit greedy, even though it is like another PG. It's just finding deck space for a lot of other playable cards in the early game is hard, because really your only early game in these lists so far is really just Sequence and Exalted. But of course, Exalted is really easy to use when you ride up onto like grade 2, and of course you ride up to 3, and when you play Draconis' cost, of course, to just call it out, and then it'll have boost for that turn. And of course, you know, if you have to, you can always move it up, have it intercept, and you know, call it out of deck if you really have to. It's just most of the time, you know, your targets are usually other things in the deck. So yeah, I think Orange OT doesn't really matter. I think honestly any OT is probably fine. It's just Orange OT is really nice because you have a lot of drives throughout the turn, especially on your Persona turn, and Orange OT and crit is just always robbery. The last version of the list I want to talk about is the Alden ride line. You could also swap the grade 2 as well for the Alden to reveal the 3 different grades. But you know, the point is that you have Tranquilla, and Tranquilla's very easy utility. Scoop out Dog, scoop out your triple rare, get free energy, get free soul, kind of just outpace the game very fast. Soul and Fronts are also here, and I think Soul and Fronts are very, very interesting because again, you have a lot of soul cost, so I think those will go up a lot. Fire Reckless, I think, is also an amazing option for this deck if you are not playing Shroud and Shadow or Caliburn. Because, you know, with Caliburn, you're either getting the CB or not getting the CB, I think, in the matchup. And if you do burn that 1 CB through, you know, Valtrosa or something else, you do have that autonomy to just not do that and make sure you don't get CB denied and kind of just, you know, just either have a booster behind Van and swing past, or just kind of play more passive and not tri-lane. Again, Fire Reckless, of course, is amazing as pitch fodder because you do discard a lot in this deck, and it's extra option on top of Exalted Dragon if you're playing more. This version of the list is only playing 2 because we have Tranquilla here, but of course Fire Regulus is really good. You know, it doesn't count as your order play for the turn, not that this version or this deck list is playing a lot of normal orders, but that does come up. And of course it's just deck then 1, or just, you know, if you whiff and choose not to call anything, just free draw 1. And of course you have also a lot of selective deck thinning through like the Ace unit, through, you know, your check top 7 for like, you know, Gab or Liael and whatnot. So I do think the deck is coherent enough to the point where it will still have really great numbers and be very consistent. I'm just worried more so about defense, but of course you have Amorta to supplement that. And like mentioned earlier, you could always, if you had to divine skill into Amorta, it's just usually you'll divine skill from soul. But yeah, I think the deck does have a lot of potential. I think in terms of getting Sirgon off, there isn't really anything easier besides like Wisdom Teeth, but I think Wisdom Teeth will burn way too much of your resources. And again, a lot of people really don't prefer those kind of builds because they're very reliant on finding both pieces instead of just playing a very straightforward list like this that kind of is just a lot more flexible and kind of help you with retaining hand while also still having early game and not necessarily having to fill up all of your board with units, but still getting very good tempo and just living to your divine skill turn where you will just hopefully overwhelm your opponent and still have enough hand to, end the game the turn after. So, again, 5 draws. I think effect fronts are something people will have to test and mess around with, but I think that is definitely a solid option because if you do run into soul problems, it's a very easy thing to throw in. Like, it does really hurt not having the 20k shield, being able to guard early and get soul and just have a lot of soul freedom for your cost, mostly Exalted Dragon and Regalius. Again, I'm probably saying the name completely wrong, to get the check top 7 and find your Gabs and Amorta early because that is really important, especially on your turn 3, because those cards are going to be your easiest pitch fodder, besides obviously your Persona rides and, keeping OG Amorta for the PG. So yeah, that is basically the idea with these deck lists. Do let me know what you are cooking. I think there are a lot of options because obviously it's Caterpillar. You've got so many generics to work with. Also, Gregayon, the CC dog, is a really good option. The only problem with that is you had to call that turn. So he is really good CC in terms of tempo in the long game because, once you call him or once you call anything off your on attack skill, you'll get to just sack him off and countercharge 1. The problem is he's just not on command countercharge on your turn, which is a little bit of a problem. And then of course for the ride line, you can just play the full-on old ride line with Tranquilla and I believe it's Sodius. Sodius is the Raziel ride line. I'm probably getting the name wrong, but yeah, the grades here that reveals 3 different grades, check top 5 and then call, I believe it's grade 2 or less. I have to check it again. I don't have it up in front of me right now. But yeah, that pretty much does it for the deck lists. Do let me know again what you're cooking for Liael Amorta. I really love the discussion on the community post, so I'll try to do more of those. I was surprised honestly how much engagement it got. But I was really happy that people were talking about it, and I think that's my favorite part of seeing these videos, is seeing people cook and, giving people like a starting point for where they really want to go with the deck. Again, I didn't make these lists. I'm just kind of was discussing it with a friend. I'm not too sure really what direction this deck will go in. And someone did mention the CB problem, but I believe I kind of alluded to it earlier. If I didn't, I might have cut it. But basically, if you're either getting that 1 CB for a Liael skill or not getting the CB at all, and if you're not playing Valtrosa or Wisdom, you don't need to worry about CB for early game anyways, and you're still building a hand and, you still have Dog and Exalted Dragon. So I think the deck will be just fine. You don't really need to tri-lane and play super hard aggressive because your turn 3, you'll pop off pretty hard, and on your Persona return, you'll just like overwhelm your opponent and have lots of draw checks. And, if you don't hit like 5 blanks, you're probably living. And again, you have like, 8 PGs to work with. Max, you're probably playing more so 6 or 7 just due to deck space because you want more playable units, and I think having to pitch Amorta for a skill would feel really, really bad. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Again, Wayward and some other generics are very good options. I think I covered basically everything I want to talk about. If you have more, things you want to share about what you're putting into your Liael Amorta deck, do let me know, and thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah, again, thank you guys so much for being interactive with the community, and of course, be kind to others. Let them know what you're cooking for the deck list. You might be very biased to your own interpretation of the deck list, but I think talking about deck lists, at least for Vanguard, is some of the most exciting things about the game because you can learn a lot from other people and, just kind of get more opinions to, kind of supplement how you want to build your deck. I do think in terms of Vanguard, your deck style for how you want to play really will impact your deck list more, but I think being able to know the options that Amorta can play as well as, in the future, just to keep in mind for, is very interesting. And of course, we also have, Caterpillar, every generic possible under the sun. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. And of course, comment down below what you are doing with this deck. Would really like to know. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you another time.